Ms. Kunin, welcome.
Thank you.
Good to have you here, of course.
My pleasure.
My first question would be about you being born in Switzerland, and you moved to the US when you were 7 years old. Tell us, how was the Switzerland of your childhood?
Well, very different from what we have now. You know, it was smaller, it was calmer, but you know, some things don't change in Switzerland. You know, the banks are still there, the Bahnhofstrasse is still there, and you know, the arcades in Bern. So what was interesting was I felt as if my life was coming full circle. You know, we left Switzerland in a time of war, and my mother was concerned that Hitler might invade Switzerland, as he had all the other countries surrounding Switzerland. And she didn't dream, no doubt, that her daughter would come back someday as the American ambassador. So it was a very exciting opportunity for me to come back in that capacity.
Yeah. Talking about this time as U.S. ambassador, how do you think your Swiss roots influenced your work during 1996 and 1999?
Probably the best thing I did was speak some Schweizerdeutsch. And then people were so amazed, you know, that an American ambassador could speak any language other than English. So, you know, my first press conference the morning I arrived, I said Grüezi and a few other words, and I did some interviews in Schweizerdeutsch, which was a challenge, but I did it. But it also obviously gave me an understanding of Swiss attitudes, Swiss culture, and I have some cousins still there. So, you know, I was both an American, but because I've grown up in America, so that's the education and the way of life that I've absorbed. But I also had strong attachment to my roots.
Much of your political work was devoted to women's empowerment. You are also the author of Politics and Power, How Women Can Win and Lead. Now switching to US politics, why do you think there has never been a woman as President of the United States so far?
Well, I certainly had hoped there would be. I worked for Hillary Clinton, and it is ironic that when I was in Switzerland, Ruth Dreyfus was president, and of course with a rotating council, it's more possible. But also, even though Swiss women got the vote very late, probably later than most countries except Liechtenstein, but the Swiss women jumped right in and were in key positions and are in key positions. So even now as we speak, I think the percentage of women in the Swiss parliament is greater than the percentage in the United States, which is only 16%. So I've long believed that democracy really means that you represent the people that you serve. And since half the population is female, I believe they should be there. I've also written a new book, which is coming out in May, called The New Feminist Agenda. And it's about families and work. And how do families, especially women, but increasingly men too, manage, you know, getting good child care, getting flexible work hours, and that's a problem in Switzerland, and it is here, though in some instances Switzerland is a little more advanced there too than the United States.
Maybe. You just said that you just wrote a new book, so you're still, after having left politics, quite an active figure in society. Please let us know what you're working on after the book, what you're currently doing.
Well, I'm very fortunate that I'm at the University of Vermont, where I like to have an academic roof over my head and be with students, because I think that keeps you au courant. And so I do a lot of public speaking, I do some teaching, and for the last 2 years I've really focused on this book. And I also started an NGO 20 years ago now called the Institute for Sustainable Communities. And that is based in Vermont, but we do work in China and many countries in the world on environment and democracy.
Last question is a personal question. Let's say on a very snowy and cold winter's day in Vermont, what would you prefer to have? A nice Swiss cheese fondue or a good juicy American bacon cheeseburger?
I think a fondue, you know, though obviously you go back and forth. A good cheeseburger is always good, but yeah, I enjoyed fondue. The only thing is you can't have it every night.
I agree.
You have to be a little careful, and the same with raclette. But no, I've been back to Switzerland several times. We were back this spring too. No, this January we were back to see my cousin, and so I still have good friends there and a sense of connection with the country.
Okay. Ms. Kunin, thank you very much for granting us this interview.
My
We wish you
pleasure.
all the best for the future.